The AI industry facing increased scrutiny around energy usage. Our next guest forming the AI Infrastructure Coalition in partnership with big tech and energy companies like Google, Cisco, Duke Energy, and more, focused on advancing U.S. leadership in AI. Joining us now is former Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema and former Louisiana Congressman Garrett Graves leading the efforts. It's great to see both of you. Senator Sinema, what does this group aim to do?
Well, our main goal is to help build the ecosystem throughout the country to ensure American AI dominance. You know, we're in a race against China to determine which values will control AI for the future, and we absolutely want it to be American values. So our coalition's goal is to help remove the barriers and solve the problems on the path to that ability to have American AI dominance. And energy is a huge part of that.
Is it a lobby group? Is it an advocacy group? Because how will you be using both of your political chops on both sides of the aisle?
Well, what we seek to do is to help bring together all parts of the tech stack. So from the energy companies to the builders, to the companies who fund the AI data centers, to the folks who are powering AI for the future, and help them get on kind of a general same page about what we need to do to ensure that America drives this AI dominance for the globe. So we interact closely with the administration, we work with Congress, and we help shape the national narrative by combating false information and fake narratives.
Congressman, what has been the biggest challenge that you're running into as you are going down this path?
Well, Senator Sinema and I are not strangers to misinformation, so certainly you run into challenges with misinformation. But the reality is that this is all about outcomes. This is about outcomes for American people with better healthcare outcomes, with help budgeting their finances, with managing electricity, with getting through traffic. So what Senator Sinema and I are doing is just staying focused on outcomes to ensure that Americans can benefit from this technology, that these are U.S. companies that are prevailing, and that we have everything from the environmental standards, the energy, electricity availability in place without having an adverse impact on consumers. And that's really what we're focused on, but it's all about outcomes in this case.
Well, there is increased scrutiny, as I mentioned, about the build-out and the impact on consumers. You say you want consumers to benefit, but they're paying higher electricity bills. And, Senator Bernie Sanders, Congressman, wants a moratorium on building data centers.
And I think it's important to push back on that very fact, because Berkeley Labs came out with a study saying that you're not having an impact on consumers. Southern companies came out and said they would not allow consumers to pay higher rates. Microsoft came out and made an announcement saying this will not have an adverse impact on consumers. So it's that type of misinformation, those types of commitments and investments that we're working to make sure that we get in place.
Senator, what were you going to say? Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the airwaves, and this is no surprise, are dominated by misinformation. But the reality is that these companies are working hard to ensure that we're increasing domestic energy production. And that's why we're working so closely with groups like the National Energy Dominance Council and relying on companies like Microsoft, who just several weeks ago made a major announcement ensuring that all of their AI build-out is self-funded so that consumers do not bear the burden of increased energy costs. And, here in Arizona, Sarah, the AI build-out actually happens in a different pot of energy allocation than does consumer energy. So there's no impact on consumers. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. And unfortunately, I think there's continued confusion about the benefits that AI bring to us. If I can, Sarah, I want to talk about just quickly something I think is really exciting. A study just came out from Sweden that studied 100,000 women over 2 years. And half of those women were screened for breast cancer using one radiologist and one AI machine. And the other was the standard, which is 2 doctors, 2 radiologists looking at it. And the study showed that those who had the AI-assisted technology were able to identify cancer 29% more frequently and earlier. So they actually had less severe cases. This is an example of how AI is not replacing jobs, but aiding all of us in our lives. Now, Sarah, I don't know about you, but my mom had breast cancer. My best friend's mom had breast cancer. This is good news. And yes. I'm excited.
My mom too.
Make sure. Yeah. That's right. Your mom too. I figured. That's why it's so important that we win this race and that we continue to push forward in developing AI in our country.
But I do think, and David, this was a big talking point at Davos too, is like the challenge for policymakers is going to be explaining to people, average people, how they are impacted and bettered by AI. It can't just be all the wealth centered in these mega cap investments,
right,
both private and public.
Right. I mean, Senator.
I've got another example would be, if your child's school has a fire, the speed at which a fire truck comes to the school to protect your kid and the other kids in that school is faster now than it used to be because our emergency systems are using AI to find the fastest route and get the fastest trucks there. Now, most people don't think about that when they think about, oh, I don't want an AI data center. But I think we all do want to make sure that our kids are safe at school.
No doubt. We also want to make sure that we're safe as a human race. And I think there are any number of people, including, for example, the founder of Anthropic, Dario Modé, who at least raised significant concerns about this overall race, where we certainly want to beat China, but what are we racing towards? You've named some positive things, but how do you think about it from a larger perspective, Senator Sinema, when it comes to threat to society and employment, of course, which comes up so often as being a potentially huge dislocation?
Some people are really concerned about the employment issue, but I remember, and I'm sure you do too, back in the early to mid 90s when the internet was launched, and there were economists saying, oh, this is going to end employment, no one's going to have any jobs. Of course, we're all working more now than we were back then. I know I am. I'm sure you are too. So there will be adjustments. And that's why, for instance, the Department of Labor is working to help plan for reskilling and to help folks really lean into what jobs will look like as we move forward. The reality is, and Garrett sees this in his own backyard, we've got a huge shortage of building trades, electricians, et cetera, and we're going to need a lot of folks who know how to use AI moving to the future. And our colleges, universities, and trade schools are all pivoting to help plan for that.
Congressman, it feels like the debate's not really about whether AI is good or bad, right? Senator, we've had the mayor of Chandler on after that city council voted against some rezoning. Isn't it more, Congressman, about who has the oversight in developing these, whether it's just federal permitting or whether local communities are going to have some say at all?
Oh, look, that's certainly a big part of it. But look, this is all, at the end of the day, this is about people. Senator Sinema opened up this whole segment talking about how this is either going to be the United States or China. Look, if we're worried about jobs, if we're worried about impacts on people, if we're worried about AI being a positive development, it needs to be U.S.-centric. And that's really what we're focused on, is making sure that we have U.S. companies, U.S.-centric based AI, employment opportunities here that benefit our nation, our economy, our people. And so, look, that's what this is about. Does it include the participation of local state governments as well as the federal government? Absolutely it does. And there needs to be input by all of these entities. But we also need to recognize that this is absolutely critical. It is a race. We saw when DeepSeek was out there, we saw some of the misinformation that AI tool from China was putting out there, saying bad things about democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, human rights. Those aren't the types of values that we want to proliferate, that we want to advance or support long term.